Some artists become famous because they challenge their era. Jules Girardet did something very different. He understood his era perfectly. While others chased grand artistic revolutions, he turned a glance, an awkward smile, or a chance encounter into a story that feels surprisingly alive even today. More than a century later, his paintings still make us wonder, what happened just before this moment, and what happened next? Want more stories about the brilliant minds behind history's greatest art? Join the channel by subscribing and hitting that like button. It tells YouTube to share these stories with everyone who loves art, history, and deep storytelling. Jules Girardet was an artist who could turn history into theater and everyday life into a small human drama. Today, many viewers see his paintings as elegant scenes from a distant past. Beautiful costumes, charming streets, romantic encounters, historical episodes. But behind all that refinement was a remarkably observant storyteller. He painted flirtation, embarrassment, courage, anxiety, courtly games, and historical upheaval in a way that makes you feel as though you've accidentally stepped into someone else's life. His paintings often resemble scenes from an old film, a conversation near a flower stall, a knight preparing for battle, a tense moment at court, a chance meeting on a quiet street. Yet what made these works memorable wasn't simply the setting, it was the story unfolding inside them. Jules Girardet was born on April 10, 1856 in Versailles. Art was already part of his world from the very beginning. He came from a large family of Swiss Huguenots, where creativity wasn't just encouraged, it was woven into everyday life. His father, Paul Girardet, was a respected engraver and master of reproductive etching. His brothers, Eugène Girardet, Léon Girardet, and Paul Armand Girardet, also became artists and engravers. Léon was even Jules's twin brother. His sister Julia pursued artistic work as well. In a family like that, talent almost felt like an expectation rather than a surprise. Girardet received a classical academic education at the Paris School of Fine Arts, where he studied under the celebrated academic painter Alexandre Cabanel. Cabanel was known for creating highly polished and carefully constructed paintings, and his influence can clearly be seen in Girardet's technical mastery. But Girardet never became a copy of his teacher. He borrowed the discipline of academic training and gradually transformed it into something more personal, more emotional, and far more theatrical. As a young artist, he began exhibiting at the Paris Salon, the most important art exhibition in France. For a 19th century painter, being accepted there could change an entire career. In 1881, Girardet earned a medal at the Salon. 8 years later, he received a silver medal at the 1889 Exposition Universelle in Paris. By that point, his reputation had spread well beyond France. Yet, painting wasn't his only pursuit. Girardet also worked as an illustrator for French and Swiss publications. At the same time, he developed a deep fascination with history. One subject that repeatedly drew his attention was the Vendée Uprising, one of the most tragic chapters of the French Revolution. He painted battles, escapes, resistance, and moments of upheaval. But unlike a distant chronicler, he focused on the people caught inside those events. Fear, confusion, courage, desperation. These were the emotions that interested him most. He was also fascinated by Louise Michel, one of the most famous figures of the Paris Commune. In her story, he saw more than politics. He saw the drama of an entire generation reflected through one remarkable life. But perhaps the most intriguing side of Girardet is the one modern audiences encounter most often today. His genre scenes and gallant paintings remain some of his most recognizable works. Looking at them, it's easy to understand why. Girardet treated painting almost like a stage production. Young women carrying flowers, well-dressed gentlemen, unexpected encounters in old European towns, flirtation, awkward smiles, suggestive gestures. The scenes often feel lighthearted and playful, yet they remain surprisingly human. Girardet understood something many artists miss. Sometimes, a single glance can tell a bigger story than an epic historical event. In his paintings, people rarely seem posed. Instead, they look as though they've been caught in the middle of a real moment. As viewers, we get the feeling that the scene continues beyond the frame. What happened a minute earlier? What happens next? Girardet leaves those questions unanswered, and that's exactly what makes the painting so engaging. He loved working with contrasts, youth and age, seriousness and flirtation, social status and human awkwardness. Even everyday objects became part of the narrative. A colorful umbrella, a flower, a letter, a window left open. These details often act like clues, quietly inviting the viewer deeper into the story. Technically, Girardet remained firmly rooted in the traditions of late French academic painting. His works are filled with carefully rendered fabrics, architecture, interiors, and costumes. The influence of academic training is especially visible in his compositions. He guided the viewer's eye with remarkable precision, arranging scenes almost like theatrical sets. Every gesture and every object served a purpose. In 1892, Girardet was awarded the Legion of Honor. By then, he was already considered an established master. His personal life was relatively stable compared to many artists of the era. In 1881, he married Marie-Mathilde Marguerite Meilleur de Montrichet in Marseille. Together, they had two daughters, Simone and Yvonne. For his family, Girardet built a home with a spacious studio in Boulogne-Billancourt. It became both his workplace and the center of family life. He spent much of his later years there, continuing to paint well into old age. Jules Girardet died in Boulogne-Billancourt on January 25, 1938, at the age of 81. The exact cause of death is not clearly documented in public sources. By then, the art world had changed dramatically. Modernism, the avant-garde, and new artistic movements had begun to dominate the conversation. The academic tradition that had brought Girardet success was no longer at the center of the art world. Yet his work never completely disappeared. His paintings remained in museums, private collections, and on the art market. Today, his works can still be found in museums across France, including the museum in Cholet. What's particularly interesting is how differently Girardet is viewed today compared to his own lifetime. Modern audiences don't just see academic painting. They see a window into the 19th century. A world where people flirted with a glance, where a chance meeting could become a small performance, and where everyday life carried its own sense of drama. Girardet wasn't fighting against the tastes of his era. He understood them perfectly. And in some ways, that became his greatest challenge. Academic painters are often dismissed today as being too polished or too proper. But 19th century Paris was fiercely competitive. Winning Salon medals and earning recognition required extraordinary technical skill. Girardet's struggle wasn't personal scandal or artistic rebellion. It was something quieter. He became a master of a world that was already beginning to disappear. After his death, art moved further toward modernism, abstraction, and expression. Many artists who had been technically brilliant, successful, and respected in their own time gradually found themselves overshadowed by more controversial and dramatic figures. And that's exactly what makes Girardet so fascinating today. Not a scandal, not a tragedy, not a dramatic downfall. Instead, a rare ability to transform an ordinary moment into an emotional theater where even the smallest gesture becomes a story worth telling. Thank you for watching and spending this time with us. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments which part of Jules Girardet's story surprised you the most. And before you go, visit alebrio.co and join a community of contemporary artists and handmade creators from around the world. Discover original work, connect with creative people, and explore new artistic talent. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.